there is a moment most people have never experienced. Not a dream, not a memory, a real physical state that your ancestors lived inside every single night for 300,000 years. A darkness so complete, so total, so absolute that your eyes never adjust to it, because there is nothing to adjust to. No glow from a phone, no light creeping under a door, no distant street lamp, nothing. Just a blackness so thick it has weight. And inside that blackness, every night without exception, the entirety of the human species sat together and did something that would eventually build every civilization, every story, and every idea that has ever existed. This is what actually happened after dark for most of human history, and the answer is not what anyone expects. Start with the darkness itself, because modern humans have never genuinely experienced it and cannot fully imagine it. Even in a room with the lights off, even in the countryside far from a city, there is light. Satellites above, stars below the cloud line, the faint orange glow of a town 20 miles away bleeding into the horizon. Real prehistoric darkness. On a cloudy night without fire, a human being sitting in the open could not see the ground beneath their feet, could not see their own hands raised in front of their face. Everything beyond arm's reach simply did not exist visually. And out there in that nothingness, the predators were awake. Leopards, hyenas, cave lions, all of them with eyes built for all of them hunting exactly this kind of darkness. For most of human prehistory, nightfall was not a transition between day and evening. It was a hard wall. On one side of that wall, you were a functional human being. On the other side, you were prey. Fire changed this. Not gradually, not subtly, but completely and immediately. The earliest evidence of humans deliberately controlling fire comes from a cave in South Africa called Wonderwork, and it dates back roughly 1 million years. But the consequences of fire were not just warmth and cooked food. Fire drew a circle. Inside that circle, predators would not enter. The light was too bright, the heat too unpredictable, the humans too alert and too grouped together. Outside that circle, the darkness remained absolute. But inside it, something had never happened before in the history of life on this planet. A creature that had always gone still and silent when the sun went down was now awake. Alert, safe, and for the first time, with nowhere to go and nothing threatening them, with hours stretching ahead before dawn, genuinely free to simply be with one another. What they did with those hours is the most important thing almost nobody knows about human history. A researcher named Polly Wiesner spent years living among and recording the conversations of the Jew Hawansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living in a way that closely mirrors the original human lifestyle. She published her findings in 2014 after cataloging thousands of hours of conversation across day and night. What she found was a split so clean it looked almost designed. In the daylight hours, roughly 4 out of every 5 conversations were practical. Who would hunt where? Which plants were ripe? Arguments over food, over territory, over the logistics of survival. Daytime talk was work. It was business. It was the exchange of information needed to get through another day. Then the sun went down and the fire came up, and the entire character of human speech transformed. At night, that ratio reversed. 4 out of every 5 nighttime conversations were stories, not reports, not logistics. Stories, tales of people who lived far away and long ago, descriptions of places no one in the group had ever seen, accounts of strange events and unexplained things, jokes that collapsed the whole group into laughter, and myths, the big ones. Where did we come from? What happens when we die? What do the stars mean? Who made the world and why? Wiesner concluded that the campfire was not simply a place where humans kept warm at night. It was the original classroom, the original theater, the original place of work. Everything that makes human culture distinct from animal behavior, our ability to imagine things that do not exist, to transmit knowledge across generations, to build shared beliefs that hold large groups together, was born in those firelit hours after dark. The night was not empty time. The night was where we became human. But there is another piece of this story that is even and it involves the way your body was built to sleep a way that almost no modern human ever experiences anymore. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Weir ran an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health. He removed all artificial light from a group of volunteers. For 4 weeks, they experienced 14 hours of genuine darkness every night, the kind of darkness that would have been normal for a prehistoric human. He did not tell them how to sleep. He did not set a schedule. He simply removed the light and watched what happened. Within 3 weeks, every single participant converged on the same sleeping pattern independently. They slept for approximately 4 hours. Then they woke up. They remained awake for 1 to 2 hours in the middle of the night. Then they slept again for another 4 hours until morning. Not one person was instructed to do this. The pattern simply emerged, as if something buried underneath centuries of artificial light had finally surfaced. Ware measured their hormone levels during those wakeful nighttime hours and found something he had not expected. The participants were producing elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone present during deep meditation, during the experience of flow, during states of profound calm. They described those middle-of-the-night hours as peaceful beyond anything they felt during normal waking life. Reflective, still, quietly alert in a way that felt fundamentally different from ordinary consciousness. A historian named Roger Eckerk had been finding evidence of this pattern for years before Ware's experiment. Digging through 16 years of historical records, prayer books, court documents, personal diaries, medical texts spanning multiple centuries and multiple cultures, Eckerk kept finding references to something called first sleep and second sleep. The assumption among historians had always been that these were unusual cases, exceptions, but Eckerk found over 500 separate references across centuries and cultures, all describing the same divided night as though it were simply the ordinary way of things. Because for most of human history, it was what ended it was light. Street lamps appeared in major European cities in the 1600s, cheaper candles followed, gas lamps arrived in the 1800s. Then, in 1879, the electric light bulb changed everything. Within 2 generations, the night that humans had inhabited for 300,000 years was gone. The word curfew carries the memory of this. It comes from the French couvre-feu, cover the fire. Every night in medieval towns, a bell rang at dusk to signal that fires should be extinguished and people should be inside. Night was supposed to be dark. Night was supposed to be silent. Moving through it without a light was not just dangerous. In many cities, it was illegal. Night belonged to vulnerability and to stillness, and to the ancient rhythm of 2 sleeps and the quiet reflective state between them. And then we replaced all of it with a switch on a wall. Modern humans are exposed to artificial light for an average of 7 to 8 hours after sunset. That light, especially the blue spectrum light from screens, tells the brain it is still daytime. Melatonin production is suppressed. The circadian rhythm built over millions of years is pushed forward by hours. The sleep that results is consolidated, yes, but it is missing something. That wakeful period in the middle of the night, the one Ware's subjects described as profoundly peaceful, the one that historical records called the watch, simply does not occur. What occurs instead, when the body's ancient programming tries to assert itself against the artificial light, is what we now call insomnia. Your ancestors sat around fires in the dark and told each other the stories that eventually became every myth, every religion, every piece of literature that has survived to reach you. They slept in 2 phases, with a window of quiet wakefulness between them that modern sleep science is only now beginning to study. They lived inside a darkness so complete that the Milky Way was not something you had to travel to see. It was simply the ceiling of the world. We replaced it. We called that replacement progress. And most of us have spent every night since then sleeping through something we do not even know we lost.